Hello, here's section 5.2. This is a tricky section for a lot of people, depending on your background and how comfortable you are with graphs in general. We're going to look at look at the relationship between function notation and graphs. So this is a pretty conceptual question. There's not a lot of computations to do for the most part, but it is kind of hard to understand the language. So let's try to pay attention to that if we can. And for this first example here, we have this relationship y equals f of t, which gives the Dow Jones Industrial Average stock index on day T of October 1987. There was a crash. I guess it wasn't a really bad crash. It was more like a correction where you can see the value of the money in the stock market went way down. Anyways, let's review function notation a little bit. What does this thing mean, y equals f of t? First thing I want you to do to get used to the language, just like if you were learning another language, is learn how to say it out loud properly. Because if a lot of students just say, oh, this says y equals ft, as if it's like multiplication, like f times t, but remember, this isn't necessarily multiplication at all. F isn't really a number. F is the name of the function, and when you say f of t, remember, say it out loud right now. If you're at home, if you're in the library or something, just mouth it. The important thing is I want you to start trying to learn the proper use of the language, because that's important to understand what I'm saying in the videos and to be able to talk about it with other people. So yeah, f is the name of the function, t is the name of the input variable, and the y-axis here represents the output. So let's look at this example first. When we say the coordinates of P right here are 15 and 2400, that's this point here, that's P. What does that mean in function notation? So the 15 here is a value of t, because yeah, this is instead of the x-axis we have the t-axis here. So if that's a value of t, that means that's the input into the function So we're going to write that as f of 15 equals well, the 2400, that is the value of the stock market there, and that is the f of t value, or in other words, the y value. So the vertical axis and f of t here mean the same thing. So that means the result of doing f of 15 is 2400. So yeah, this also means that yeah, on day 15 the stock market was the Dow Jones Industrial Average was $2,400. Let's look at this one. We have that the Dow was 1726 on October 20th. So that 1726 is the stock market index thing. So that's the result of the function. So we're going to write that as f of something equals 1726. But the input is the day, so that's where the t goes when we write the result equals f of t. And I want to say, of course, it's totally fine if you write it the other way around. 1726 equals f of 15. It means exactly the same thing. You're writing either f of x equals y or y equals f of x. Both of those are fine. So anyways, these are examples of the relationship between function notation and the graph of a function. So you've already in 5.1 looked at function notation and using it with equations and using it with tables. This section just focuses on the relationship between function notation and graphs. So there's two ways of looking at it. If you have a point AB, remember that means x equals A and y equals B. And generally on the graph, the y is the same thing as the f of your x. So we're saying that b is the y and the a is the x here. So again, that means, yeah, the input into the function is x, that's the a, and the whole result, f of a, is the same thing as b. So that can be looked at another way, and the book included both of these things, even though both of these are really saying the same thing. When we say AB, remember, you could also just write that as a f of a, because the b and the f of a are the same thing. This is what that's saying. So if you just write it with x as the name of the variable instead of talking about a specific number a, then yeah, this is saying you have x as the input and f of x, also known as y, is the output. Hi, here's the next exercise for you to do. I do want you to do it yourself, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently than in the past. I'm actually going to show you the answer just because I want to make sure that you're checking your answers, and I don't want you to bang your head against the wall for 20 minutes trying to do these problems, and I also don't want you to get it wrong without checking your answers. So I'm going to have you pause it in a minute, but do it yourself. Write down your answer. If it's wrong, I don't want you to actually erase your wrong answer. Just cross it out just to show me that you did it and got it wrong, and that's fine. And then you can check your answer after, and if you got it right, then you can fast forward through the explanation a little bit to get to the next exercise. Okay, so let's pause it here. Here's the answers. Point H here has the input is 1997, the year, and we know the input is the year because it says year t over a 20-year period, and that is the input here. So yeah, that means we're going to replace that t in the function notation with 1997, and the result, L, is 176.98. So we also have this one, f of 2004 is 176.11, because yeah, the input, what goes in the parentheses next to the f, is 2004, and the output is the water level, that is the result on the other side of the equals, and it also means that this point is on the graph. That's what it tells you about the graph. 2004, 176.11 is on the graph. Okay, let's do the same thing with this reading question. Let's read these carefully. Try to answer them yourself. If you think it's false, say why. And now is the time to pause it because the answers will appear in a little bit. Here they are. This first one is false. If it says 12,5 is on the graph, the first coordinate is always going to be like the x coordinate or the horizontal coordinate, and that should always represent the input. I just wrote this wrong here. Whoops. I fixed it there. So yeah, if it says 12,5, that first coordinate, the x coordinate, is always the input, and that should be what goes in the parentheses. 5, the y coordinate, will always represent the output, also known as the function value. And so yeah, they just had the 5 and the 12 mixed up. So for part B, they got it right. If g of p equals w, that means the input is p, and that should go there. And the w is the output, that should be the y coordinate, or the vertical coordinate. So C is false. We can find the function value at x by finding the x coordinate of the corresponding point on the graph of f is not quite right. This should say the y coordinate there. The function value is another word for the output. So yeah, if you look at the point with a certain x coordinate and see what the y coordinate there is, that y coordinate is the function value. And D is true. Every y coordinate on the graph of f represents a function value for f. So yeah, function value means the same thing as output, means the same thing as f of x, means the same thing as y. On the other hand, input always means the x coordinate. All right, thanks for finishing this up. See you in the next video.